If you want to get a promotion, there are a couple of things I want you to know. One, you'll get the promotion way faster if you ask for it rather than waiting for someone to give it to you. And two, even if your company's in a downturn, you don't have to wait to get the process started. In today's episode, I'm going to help you make the ask for a promotion today and get the process underway so that future you can enjoy a bigger title, better compensation, and a more exciting role. Let's dive in. Welcome to The Art of Speaking Up, a podcast that helps professional women access the limitless potential that lies within them. I'm your host, Jessica Guzik, and my mission is to help you find that spark inside you that has the power to transform your career in ways you may not have thought possible. I'm so excited that you're here. And now, on to the show. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you for tuning in. If you are wanting a promotion, and if you are wondering how to go about asking for that promotion, this episode is for you. I was originally going to record an episode just on the foundations of how to go about the process of having discussions with your boss that lead you to get a promotion. And then I realized that so many people right now are struggling with the fact that their company is going through layoffs, or their company isn't growing, or maybe their company is restructuring. And a lot of times when you're experiencing those things in your work environment, it can feel like you have to put your professional development goals on hold. It can feel like, well, if my company's laying people off and things aren't going well, how can I possibly have conversations about me getting promoted? How is that supposed to fit in when things aren't going well and overall there's no growth at my company? Maybe people around you are even losing their positions. Now, the purpose of today's episode is not to be insensitive or callous in the face of a really difficult market and in the face of a working environment where a lot of people are losing their jobs and where the job market's very difficult and where layoffs have been pretty common and prominent. But the purpose of today's episode is to make sure that those things don't get in the way of you pursuing the growth that you desire for your career, because people really get themselves in a space where they feel like they have to wait until things stabilize before they can start having discussions around getting a promotion. And this is actually one of the biggest mistakes you can make. And in today's episode, I'm going to explain why. So we're going to do two things in today's episode. The first is I'm going to walk you through a typical timeline and help you understand that asking for a promotion within your company is a long-term process that you want to start now. It's not something you want to wait to get started. And then second, later on in the episode, I'm going to share with you some tactical steps and language and suggestions that you can adopt in order to get the conversation going with your manager, even if your company is going through a phase where there's not a lot of growth, there's not a lot of promotions happening. I'm going to show you how to navigate the promotion conversation if those are the conditions that you're under. Now, whether your company is struggling to grow or not, there are so many learnings in this episode that are going to help you better understand the process of advocating for a promotion. And with that, I want to share one of the most important foundational things with you, which is the idea that there are two ways that you can really think about getting promoted. You can either have your manager and leadership at your company take the lead on that process. So they're initiating the discussions. You're kind of waiting for them to tell you how you're doing. You're waiting for them to tell you that you have been promoted. Or you can be the one initiating those discussions. So you are taking the lead. You are initiating conversations with your manager and with leadership at your company. So instead of waiting for them to take the lead, you're the one taking the lead. Now, I always recommend the latter approach because it typically just leads you to get promoted faster. Now, there are a few reasons why this is true. I'm going to hit on a couple of big ones. I'm not going to go super deep on this, but I do want to give you some context so that you can understand how important it is to play a proactive role in you getting promoted. But number one, if your leader knows that this is a priority for you, they are much more likely to prioritize it for you. There's a very good chance that there are other people in your organization who also want promotions. And if those people are having conversations with your manager and with leadership, and they're letting your manager know that they want to get promoted, and you aren't letting your manager know, and then there's a situation in the future where an opportunity opens up, they're probably going to give it to the person that has been advocating for themselves if all other things are equal. I want you to put yourself in your manager's position. I want you to imagine you have two team members. They both have the same exact good performance. You have budget to promote only one of them. And one of your team members hasn't ever had a conversation with you expressing their desire to be promoted, and the other team member has. Who are you going to give the promotion to? You're probably going to give it to the person who's been having the conversations with you, because that's just one extra piece of information you have to sway your decision. So you want to be the person who is taking the lead in those conversations. And it also demonstrates a very important form of leadership and maturity. Because when you're asking for a promotion, basically what you're telling your manager and leadership at your company to do is to have deeper trust that if they put you in something bigger or higher stakes, you will be able to show up for it. You will be able to push for outcomes and push for results. And one of the best ways to show them that you can push for outcomes and you can get results is to bring that same determination, that same pushing for outcomes, that same focusing on results to your professional development process. You want to be congruent. Like if you're asking for more leadership or a bigger role, you want to be demonstrating leadership. And I think one of the most powerful ways we demonstrate leadership is by being proactive and not waiting for other people to initiate the conversations about what matters most to us, but really by showing them like, hey, this is important to me. And so I'm going to take the initiative, and I have the courage to have this conversation with you. And I have the leadership skills to have this discussion with you about my future in the company and about me stepping into a bigger role. And so I think the more that we can take up space in that way, the more we are implicitly showing our leader or our manager that we're ready to take on more. So the first thing that I want you to take away is that if a promotion is important to you, I strongly recommend taking the lead in having discussions and conversations around getting promoted. Now, I mentioned earlier in the episode, a big reason why people wait to do this or why they decide not to initiate discussions about getting promoted is if their company is going through some sort of downturn, or maybe their company has done layoffs, they think to themselves, it doesn't make sense for me to ask for this right now. There's obviously no growth opportunities. It also feels like, in a way, disrespectful because people are losing their jobs. And here I am talking about getting promoted and moving into leadership. And so I should wait until things are better and until things stabilize. Now, the reason that you shouldn't do this, and I'm going to share this and teach this through an analogy, is because getting a promotion is typically something that takes time. So I want you to think about asking your leadership to promote you as being equivalent to getting engaged, not to your boss and not to leadership. Just stay with me on this one. But just like if you get engaged to someone, and you want to have a big wedding, you're not going to get engaged the month before the wedding. You're going to get engaged like 1 to 2 years before the actual wedding date, because you need time to book a venue, to plan a major event, to get a dress, right? Like you need months and months to prepare all these things. And if you tried to have a wedding 30 days after getting engaged, you wouldn't actually be able to execute it properly. Getting a promotion is the same. It's not the kind of thing where you can just ask for it and it's going to happen instantly. And the biggest mistake that I see people making is thinking that that's true. Thinking like, oh, I should just be able to ask for this and I'll get promoted in the next cycle because the next cycle is happening 1 month from now. So now is the perfect time to have a conversation with my manager. If the first conversation you're having with your manager about getting promoted is right before a promotion cycle, that's a sign that you want to be spending much more time and planning much farther ahead, just like you wouldn't get engaged the month before you want to have your wedding. Now, the reason this is true is because just like a wedding has components behind the scene that need to get figured out and that take some time, similarly, promotions involve a lot of components behind the scenes that need to get figured out and that take a lot of time. Now, of course, you can sometimes get a promotion really quickly, just like you can sometimes maybe plan a wedding in a very short period of time, but it's not the best way to do it. It's not the most advisable way to do it. The better way to do it is to give yourself ample amounts of time and to think about that initial conversation with your manager as being like the engagement. Now, you're not getting engaged to your manager, you're getting engaged to your promotion, and you're not actually going to marry your promotion until several months down the line. This gives you and your manager time to plan the quote unquote wedding or time to solidify the promotion. And that process will include things like your manager looking at budget and capacity. Your manager might have to have conversations with other stakeholders. They might need to get buy-in from their leadership. You also might need to have performance-related conversations with your manager so that both of you can build a narrative and a story that shows that you are checking the boxes and that your performance is strong. That will help your manager get buy-in. Your manager might have to think about where you go and how it impacts the structure of the team. So these typically aren't quick things that can be done overnight or even in 1 month. These are things that will work out much better for you if you give yourself and your manager time to work through these variables. So the best thing that you can do is think about, what title do I want to have 12 months from now? And if I work backwards, what does that mean for what conversations I should have with my manager today? Now, this might help you start to see why, if your company is going through a period of contraction or layoffs, or your company is not doing well, why you shouldn't wait to have the conversation with your manager. That would be like someone saying to themselves, I want to have a wedding in the summer, but it is winter right now and it is snowing and cold and I don't want to get married right now, so I don't want to get engaged right now. I want to have my wedding when it's sunny and beautiful. Well, no, if you want to have a wedding in the summer, you might want to get engaged in the winter, even though the weather in the winter isn't good. If you get engaged now, by the time you're ready to have the wedding, the weather's going to be better. That's how I want you to think about promotion conversations. If you initiate them now, by the time the promotion comes to fruition, your company will probably be back in growth mode. And what's great about this as well, and this is something that people really, really overlook, is that if your company isn't growing and you go to your manager and you talk about getting a promotion and they say to you, we're not growing right now, we don't have budget or capacity for that, that puts you in a perfect position to say something like, that totally makes sense. And I was hoping that we could have a longer term conversation. Maybe right now, since it's not a practical option, maybe we could just focus on my performance. And for the next few months, we could just talk about my growth areas and how I'm doing. And then when things start to change and turn around, we can pivot and talk about next steps and talk about potential positions. Your manager is going to buy into that because that takes the pressure off of them. It takes the pressure off of them to have to find you a position and figure this out for you. So they're probably going to give you an enthusiastic yes if you basically tell them, hey, I'm putting you off the hook for this promotion. I just want to talk about my performance. And then it sets you up beautifully for the moment when your company starts to turn around and things start to pivot, because you've already been having all of these promotion conversations. Just like if you've been planning a wedding for several months, you will be set up perfectly on the day of the wedding. Similarly, if you're having conversations about your performance, then when your company actually starts doing better and growing and expanding, you will be ahead of the curve. then ready to accelerate the next phase of those conversations, which will be more tactical and which will be focused more on what your position is going to be, what you'll get promoted into, and what the timing of that will be. So what I want to do is I want to share some tips and ideas for you on how you can initiate these conversations. I recommend you do that now, like literally today or this week. I recommend you get this started, and I'm going to tell you exactly what to do right after a quick, fun ad break that I'm dropping into this episode. This is a good one. Enjoy. Hey, Jess, I'm having troubles opening this super stubborn jar of pickles. Can you help me open it? Sorry, I can't help you. I'm super busy. Busy with what? I just got access to the free resource library. What's the free resource library? It's an online library you can sign up for that is filled with digital courses and ebooks. On what topics? Everything professional development related. Communication skills, assertiveness, leadership skills, self-confidence. That sounds amazing. How much does it cost? Nothing. It's called the free resource library because it's free. What? There's got to be a catch. There is no catch. Just go to jessguzikcoaching.com/free resources or click the link in the show notes to get access. What was that? Oh, I just got so excited about the free resource library that it gave me the strength I needed to open my jar of pickles. But quit distracting me with all this chit chat. I gotta grab the free resource library. What's the URL? It's in the show notes, but it's jessguzikcoaching.com/free resources. Got it. Thanks. Bye. Okay, so hopefully by now in the episode, I've sold you on the idea that if your company is not doing well, you should not wait until your company starts doing better to initiate promotion discussions. I want you to basically imagine that a promotion process takes between 3 and 18 months. And 3 months is extremely fast. So it's really more like 6 to 18 months, or possibly even longer if you're in a higher leadership role. So if you're going to embark on a 6 to 18 month process, you can either start it now, or you can start it 6 to 12 months from now when your company is doing better. But why not start it now if you have the option to? So whenever you're initiating promotion discussions with your manager, I always recommend you do it in 2 steps. And the rationale behind these steps is to build rapport and to deepen your relationship with your manager and to make sure that you aren't bringing up the topic of promotions in a way that might make them feel like they've dropped the ball and that they've kind of like neglected to bring this up. And we also don't want them to feel like they're being pushed too hard into it. If we make our manager feel bad or pushed and they start to have a negative feeling or a negative reaction, that is not going to work in our favor. It's really important that your manager feels like they're collaborating with you, feels like they're a part of this, feels like you are grateful for their support. And so my way of guiding you to ask for a promotion is designed to achieve all of those things, because the last thing we want is for your manager to feel not great about the way that you are initiating this conversation. And it's a delicate subject where on the one hand, it could get your manager really excited to support you, or on the other hand, it could make a manager feel like their employee is being entitled or pushing too hard. And we really want to avoid that. Because remember, you're in a power dynamic with your manager where they have more say and more influence. So part of the art of influencing is recognizing when the other party has more decision power than you and taking that into account in the way that you interact with them. So with that said, there are 2 things that I recommend you do. The first thing that I recommend you do is that you give your manager a heads up in advance, and you let them know that you would like to have a professional development conversation with them. This is really important. Don't surprise them. Don't bring it to your one-on-one without telling them that you're bringing it. Surprises generally are not good. If people know what we're bringing to them, they're much more likely to have a good reaction. especially if it's something complicated like asking for a promotion, because like I mentioned, that could elicit feelings in your manager of like, oh shoot, I've dropped the ball. I should be initiating these conversations with my direct report, right? So like if you surprise your manager and they start having all those thoughts and they start feeling negatively about themselves because they feel like they've dropped the ball, they might project those negative feelings onto you. And they might start thinking, oh, well, this person is entitled. And why are they asking me for this? And I'm so busy. We don't want that to happen. We want to make sure that that doesn't happen. And so you start by giving your manager a heads up. Now, here's how I recommend you do this. You can do this in person. You can do this via email. I think, however, the more you can do it like in person, the better. So if you can do this in a face-to-face or on like a Teams call or a Zoom call, that is better than email. But what you want to say is something like this. You want to say something like, I've been doing some thinking about my goals and my growth and my professional development, and I would love to grab some time to sit with you, get your thoughts on how I'm doing, and share some of my own objectives with you so that I could get some feedback and some direction based on what you've been seeing from me recently. So in this, I'm doing two things. One is I'm giving a heads up, and two is I'm really acknowledging the power dynamic that exists by letting my manager know that, yes, I want to have this conversation, but also letting them know that like I want their input and their feedback. It's not all about me. They get to have a say in it too. Now, after you've said this, they will probably say, great, that sounds good. Let's grab some time. Then I recommend you say something like, great, I'm super happy to bring the agenda so that you don't have to prepare anything, but I want to make sure that that feels okay. And if you have anything that you want to bring, let me know. But if not, don't worry, I've got it. Again, this is paying respect to the power dynamic. It's basically saying to your manager, like, listen, I know you're the one in charge. You're the one that gets to decide how these conversations go down. However, I want to take that work off your plate and just bring the agenda so that you don't have to worry about it. So that avoids your manager feeling like, again, like they've dropped the ball or they're being inadequate. And it really just shows them that you're just willing to take on the agenda to just save them the effort and save them like one less thing that they have to think about. So you're basically going to confirm with them that you will bring the agenda for this conversation. And if they have a different preference, they can let you know, right? Like they might say like, no, actually, I have a framework I use, or like, oh, we're overdue to have your official annual conversation. So why don't I bring that, right? So if they have a direction they want to move it in, you will want to work with them and support that direction. However, most of the time, most managers, not all, but most, when you ask them about this, they're going to feel guilty. They're going to feel bad that they haven't been giving you feedback. They're going to feel bad that they've neglected some of their management duties. And so by you letting them know that you're looking forward to chatting with them and that you're happy to bring the agenda, it takes some of that guilt off of them and it makes them feel better about the conversation, which is really going to support you. And I'm just going to go off on a quick side tangent because this is a huge mistake people make when they're trying to be assertive or get what they want in the workplace. They think like I have to go in and like make a bold ask, right? So someone might think like, oh, I have to be bold and tell my manager I'm getting time with them and tell them that I'm bringing an agenda for my professional development. But we have to think about what could go wrong and potential pitfalls with the other stakeholder. If you go in super bold and are like, okay, I'm scheduling this time with you and I'm bringing an agenda and we're talking about my professional development, and you're not creating space in that conversation for your manager to shape the direction of it, that might feel strange to them. That might feel to them like you're taking on a role that belongs to them. And so when you make this initial ask by letting them know that you're happy to have them guide the conversation, you're paying respect to the power dynamic. And then when you do offer to take on the agenda, it's not coming from a place of like you taking on a set of duties that belongs to them. It's coming from a place of you wanting to lighten their workload in a way that supports both of you. And so the dynamic between the two of you is going to be much better in the actual conversation because you've set the context this way. So assuming that your manager feels comfortable with you bringing the agenda, then you can plan the agenda for this conversation with your manager. Now, a lot of times when people are thinking about asking for a promotion, They think it's a thing of like, well, I have to ask my organization and then they get to decide if I'm deserving or not of a promotion. And the way that I would think about it is rather than thinking that your organization decides on your future, I would think about it as you decide on your future, no matter what organization you work at. So the company you work at is irrelevant. What's relevant is that you, in your career, you have a goal of moving into a leadership position. So when you talk with your manager and you share this idea that you're interested in a promotion, you're not sharing it in a way where you're saying, I want a promotion in this company. You're sharing it in a way where you're saying something that's important to me and exciting to me in my career is to transition into a blank role. So I'll just make up a role, is to transition into a director role. So you're sharing it in a way where it's not about you transitioning into a director role in this company, but it's actually just about the fact that for your career, this is something that you want, regardless of where you work. This is just a goal and a dream that you have. This is an influencing tactic because if you don't do this and you say to your boss, I want to be a director at this company, if your boss thinks, well, they're not skilled enough for that. Or maybe your boss does think they're skilled enough, but your boss thinks, well, I'm their boss. Shouldn't I be initiating those conversations? Your boss is going to get resistant and defensive. They're not going to feel like they're getting to take the lead in this. The power dynamic's going to feel off balance. And so the way you get around them having this experience is you talk about your aspirations in general. So you'd say something like, something that I've always wanted and that has been really exciting for me to pursue is a director role. And I would love to talk to you about the path to get there and whether you think I might be ready and what that path could look like. Again, this is paying respect to the power dynamic. Now, this is really important. If your company is stagnating or restructuring or doing layoffs, your boss is probably going to say something to you that sounds like this. They're probably going to say something like, I definitely understand and you've been doing really great work. Now is such a difficult time at the company. We don't have budget. Things are really tight. And so I just want to share that context with you. Right? So they'll share some form of like the barrier or the obstacle. They might share this right away. They might share it at the end of the conversation. They might share it a week later. But at some point, that's probably going to come into the conversation. That is not a problem. That is not something that you have to avoid. Remember, if you want to get married in the summer, you have to get engaged in the winter. So you're not looking for a promotion right this minute. You're looking to get engaged to the promotion so that you can get married to the promotion in 6 to 12 months from now. So if your manager says that, then you can follow up and say, that makes so much sense. And I know things have been challenging. I was wondering if you'd just be open to maybe focusing only on my performance and just only on my skill sets and not on the actual tactical next steps of the promotion, because I want to make sure that my skill set is up to par and that my performance is as good as it can be. And maybe when things start to change, we can then look more at the tactics and look more at options for growth within the company. And when you say that, your manager is going to be so on board with that because you have just put them off the hook, right? Like they are no longer on the hook for something that they can't deliver to you, which means they're going to be way more open to having these discussions with you. And they might feel really grateful that you put them off the hook. They're probably going to feel less guilty because you're not all upset that there isn't a promotion. So they're going to lean in and really support you. They're going to show up more for these conversations around your performance because you have patted them on the back and done them a favor by being like, no worries, I know things are tricky right now. I totally get it. We can just talk about my performance. And that's going to lead to a more fruitful series of discussions that are focused on your performance, where your manager can support you much more deeply. And in those conversations, you and your manager can work together to decide what are the key performance criteria that will help us know that I am ready for this director level role. You might come up with a few different categories of skills, And you can look at each of those categories with your manager and say, okay, for this specific skill, what is the standard that I am aiming for that will really show that I'm operating at a director level? And as you continue to have conversations with your manager, they're focused on those skills. They're focused on the skills that you've laid out, and they're focused on how your recent performance, your recent projects, everything you're working on, how all those things are demonstrating growth and competency in that particular skill. So you can think about it as like you're setting out a short list of skills and you're having conversations with your manager where through those conversations and the feedback loop and the iteration, you're trying to get to a 10 out of 10 in each of those skills. And when you're at a 10 out of 10 and you're really demonstrating excellent performance across those areas and across those skill sets, then you will pivot to the more tactical discussion of actually finding you a position and where you might fit into the company. And best of all, when your company is starting to grow again and things are starting to get better, you will have so much momentum from those earlier conversations that you were having. And once again, your manager is going to prioritize you because you were willing to put the actual promotion on hold. So when things do start to change and your company starts growing again and there's more opportunity for upward mobility, you will be one of the first ones in line, like the highest priority people to receive a promotion. This is why it is so incredibly important that you don't wait for your company to start to turn around before you start to have the conversations. Think about it as minimum a 6-month process and decide if you want to initiate that 6-month process now or if you want to initiate it 6 or more months from now. Now, the last thing that I want to share with you is as you're listening to this, there might be a part of you listening thinking, okay, I listened to this episode and I got some tips, but I'm not actually going to do this. This is too scary. This is too intimidating. So I'm going to listen to the episode, but I don't know if I'm going to put it into practice. And what I want to let you know is that a lot of these types of things are the scariest before we do them. They are the scariest when they live in our minds as a theory or a concept. And the way that they become less scary is we go out and we do them and we start to learn that some of that scariness was in our minds. Like, yes, maybe it's a little bit scary, but it's not as scary and impossible as it felt in our heads. And we find that out by doing it. And the sooner you find that out, the sooner you will have freedom when it comes to your professional growth, because you will no longer be forced to wait for other people to initiate this process and this conversation for you. So even if it feels scary, you can do this. I want you to go out and do it. You will feel so proud of yourself, not just for having the conversation, but future you 6 to 12 months from now will thank you for making this happen on her behalf. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. If you found this helpful, if it inspired you to go for it, please share it with a close friend or someone you know who you feel like really deserves a promotion and is at the perfect point to advocate for themselves and their next steps. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll catch you in next week's episode. Bye!